So good morning. Anyone had any questions?
Is there a link between the 49 the number 49 that we count days for the Omer,
Yes.
versus the 49 years for the Shemitah? In other words,
Yeah.
why the number 49? The 49 gates of impurity, and then we cleanse ourselves. But when you look at the Shemitah, what's the significance?
What
of
is the
49?
parallel between the two?
Is it a coincidence, or it probably isn't? I don't know.
In fact, you can say that the number 7 times 7 is to demonstrate that everything in life is a true coincidence. Coincidence means that incidents, that means things that take place, are combined one with the other. That there's a purpose in every aspect of nature and also of history. Not like people think that everything is just chance. There's no such thing as chance. Chance is called, in last week's Rasha, Keri, a Chamat Keri. If you think that what happens, what exists in the natural world, and what exists in the human body, what exists in history, is a matter of chance, it's the happening, that is the evil inclination, which is divisive and destructive. And the whole concept of 7 times 7, and as I explained in the previous year, 7 squared, that means 7 times 7, 7 times. I'm not going to repeat all of it, I gave it previous year, last week, is all a question of to demonstrate that life is not happening. That life, in every aspect, is his story, the story of Hashem. And even a person's personal history, it's his story. And just to put it into contemporary literature, there's enormous research we've done both in nature, in the human body, and in history. Is everything random? No, we see there's also a pattern in everything. The more the science and knowledge progresses, the more you see there's a pattern in everything. And even what happens to the human being. And this is demonstrated in 7 in nature, we've spoken about it frequently, 7 colors of the spectrum, 7 notes in the octave, 7 cycles of change of substance in the human body. There's so many different aspects. And it's also shown in that the whole of the Tanakh is based on this principle, 7 times repetition of key words all through the Tanakh, and all through the things that are described in the Tanakh. And so more particularly then, the concept when we came out of Egypt to count 49 days to receive the Torah was to demonstrate that exodus from Egypt, to come from the level of being slaves to Paro, to become servants of Hashem, was a pattern. That's it, the pattern which you see closely in the Chumash. So, similarly also, to answer your question more directly, just like we have the 7 days Shabbat, 7 times 7 is the period from Pesach till the giving of the Torah. That applies to the individual member of Am Yisrael. It applies also to the Jewish people, and to some extent also all mankind. So, when we come to Eretz Israel, the land is known as the land that belongs to Hashem, it's under His guidance. And here also we have to recognize this by making a Shabbat for the land, whether it's the Shemitah, Also, the Shemitah includes the Shabbat for society in the Torah state, and culminating at 7 times 7 in the Jubilee year, when everything goes back to its origin. We explain how this is even recognized and described at great length. There was a famous pragmatic, more sociologist, William James was a more pragmatic philosopher, but there was another philosopher in America who said the whole concept of the way in which property is mentioned in the Chumash is the basis for creating an economy where exploitation of land and of capital possessions will not be abused. That's what it is. We accepted by the nation of the world. But how is it especially done with this principle, bringing things back to the original source? The parallelism between the 49 days that lead to the giving of the Torah in the desert and the laws of Shemitah, culminating with the Jubilee year, especially the Yom Kippur of the Jubilee year, when they have to blow the shofar. This is the concept that the land of Israel, just like the people of Israel, is under more intensive providence of Hashem. Why? Because this is the land from which should go up the light to all the nations, to the whole mankind, to reach the ultimate Jubilee, which is on that day that will be blown with the Shofar Gadol. What the Shofar Gadol do? It brings all the Jewish people back to their source in the land of Israel physically, and also brings back all Jews who have been scattered amongst the nations of the world to have a rejuvenation in the land of Israel, and not only to become the people of Hashem, but to become a Mamlechet Kohanim, not only to be a holy nation, but also to fulfill our role to bring the high ideals which Hashem has revealed to the people of Israel, not just individuals, but to a nation, not just to a nation that wander all over the world, but to a nation that can establish a society which strives to have the divine image in that society. And that will ultimately, as we say in our tefillah, that will ultimately be accepted by the nations of the world. If we as Jews will fulfill our task, then there'll come a time, we say it 3 times daily, that we look forward to the time when Taken Olam Malchut Shaddai, when the whole of the world will reckon that we have to make a tikkun, improvement, to bring them under the kingship of the Almighty. If not, so all the wicked people in the world will give up their wickedness and turn to you. Then the name of Hashem will be one, and mankind will become united, and war and destruction will become obsolete. That's what we're looking forward to. But any other questions? Yes?
Rosh Hashanah, which was going to be the most practical commentary on the Torah? Most practical commentary, Rambam or?
What can be practical and what it depends for who? Which person?
Practical advice.
For beginner students today who are starting, don't know the Chumash, so the first you go step by step, just let's feel it step by step. Best thing is, take something like the Art Scroll Digest commentaries, and if you want to go a bit deeper, you could better want an overview, better, the brief stone production of the Chumash, which for English-speaking students, that's the best way, start with that. If a person he's already read through the Chumash a bit and so on, heard some shiurim, and he would like to take each parsha more thoroughly, so take the other Art Scroll one, which gives the digest, or this is all Judaica. You have an English Judaica, which gives a digest of the major commentaries, or you have the Art Scroll, which gives a wider assortment on each parsha. The next stage is to try and start with Rashi. If you're fortunate enough to have a teacher with Rashi, then sometimes the best way to start is with the teacher, and he explains the Rashi. Of course, you have to accompany it with Rashi, like Rashi himself is very particular. You should know the meaning not only of the words, but the construction of the words. You can't do it. You can't. I mean, it's okay to have everything in translation in English, but in order to understand the text of the Chumash, the words of the Chumash, there's no way out of missing out on the grammar of the sentences, the grammar, the syntax, and the Rashi commentary assumes that you know some grammar, and when there are any difficulties, Rashi always refers to the grammatical translations also. So that's what one needs. But you're fortunate here in the Ulpan teacher regularly takes the Chumash and explains the Hebrew wording, which ultimately indicates the basis for all Hebrew. It's the basis of the Hebrew of the Mishnah, the basis of the Hebrew of the Gemara, of the Rashi of the Gemara, and therefore it's part of learning Torah, to learn what the words mean, and then to understand them in the context. Any other questions? What about someone else? Anyone else? Okay, second question.
When we're going to be the best step to study Onkelos with the text of the Torah? Which stage we're going to be?
Depends for each person. Depends also the ability of a person to absorb language. Some people have an easier facility for learning languages, and some just find it very difficult. So you have to gauge it according to that. Well, the best way is, if you already know Hebrew very well, then you can start studying the Targum, the Aramaic translation. It's the oldest translation available. And Rashi, if you're learning Rashi, Rashi frequently refers to Targumo. So when Rashi says that, Rashi wants to tell you, you should try to analyze what the Targum is saying, to understand the simple meaning of the verse, of the words. It's often the Aramaic translation can be a clue. So therefore, here also, like Rashi, is not telling you that you've got to really do the Targum. But Rashi is telling you, if you really want to understand what these words mean, you have to refer to it. So if you learn Chumash Rashi, it's also the best introduction required to the Targum, because as you make progress, Chumash with Rashi, and frequently Rashi says, go and look what the Targum says, and you won't be able to understand it properly, but if you've got a teacher, or you can find a translation, he'll tell you. Like also the Rashi, many linear editions, also with English of Rashi. So when they say Katagumo, so they explain what it means. So you know a bit here and a bit there, so you get some introduction. Also, there's another thing. If you're at the stage that you're learning, beginners have to sometimes. Beginners don't learn consistently. The consistent way of learning, which I see is also very successful with most of my grandchildren, is the way of learning Torah, because that's if you start at the age of 3, 4, you start learning the letters. At the age of 5, they start learning the Chumash. When they learn the Chumash, they learn to sing it according to the trop. And they're given the translation. And there are many of them who know, my grandchildren, because they had such a training, they knew the text of the Chumash more or less by heart, together with how to read it, and together with the translation, even when they hadn't yet learned Rashi inside. but they knew it, and they when they come on Shabbos and test them, it's a great joy to see how at an early age they know things that many of our generation didn't have such educational facilities as you can have in Yerushalayim. There's in fact the Talmud Torah, and also they've got the kindergarten as well. And the Talmud Torah, that's the early school where they learn. It's called Zichru Torah Moshe. Remember the Torah of Moshe. And there they memorize. And they know by memory, they can even by memory not only Chumash, from the Chumash they go to the Tanakh. They start learning also in the same manner, together with the chant, which of course remains in their memory more easily sometimes than words, but working together, it's that's what it says in Pirkei Avot. Pirkei Avot gives this system according to the oral tradition, Ben Chomesh Lemikro. When you come to, in fact, there's another tradition, Ben Shalosh Leotiot. When you come to the age of 3, you teach the children the letters. When they come to the age of 5, you teach them the Chumash. When you come to the age of 10, you teach them the Mishnah. It says when 13 is the age of Mitzvot. When you come to the age of 15, you teach them the Gemara. You might ask why, but many Chadarim, they start Gemara much earlier. But this is the pattern which is mentioned in the Mishnah, which is adopted also by the Maharal as the ideal way. The Maharal was one of the deepest also interpreters of the educational passages in the Torah, and also by Shloah Kodesh and others. It gives you such a solid foundation that when you come to the Gemara at 15, then the mind is developed also to start more thorough rational thinking. It's part of it, which is essential for Gemara. You've got to develop your potential for rational thinking, but you've got in your mind solidly all the words of the Mishnah. The Mishnah also learned by heart. Mishnah, the whole Tanakh. If you know the whole Tanakh, and you can recite it, you know what it means, and you know the song of the Tanakh, so therefore it keeps it alive in the memory most strongly. And then you learn Mishnah, which also went with cantillations at Teimanim until today. The Yemenites, they have a special cantillation, even with signs also for the Mishnah. You find it, you hear them how they say they go back to the most ancient traditions from Israel. Their pronunciation of Hebrew is also the only one that reflects all the grammatical pronunciation of each letter of the alphabet. The only ones, Teimanim. That's why let's say Natan Adler would like to go back to the origin, greatest scholars. He got himself a special Yemenite teacher to teach his family. Similarly also, I mentioned once before, which we had in the yeshiva, fortune to have one of our brilliant lecturers was the late David Salomon Sasson, whose father came from Baghdad, his grandfather came into England, one of the richest Jews in the world, who gave enormous support to Torah, and also gathered together probably the biggest library of Hebrew manuscripts in the world at this time. And then he had a beautiful place, a huge mansion in England near Oxford, Cambridge, which I managed to visit a few times. And his son became a disciple of Rav Dessler, a terrific scholar in many different areas, and he gave lectures here in the yeshiva regularly. And he also, his father, brought a Yemenite teacher to teach him how to pronounce Hebrew according to the original way. We're also fortunate here at the yeshiva that we have a few on Shabbos and Yom Tov they come in the week, there are a few Yemenites around. You'll hear how they say the bracha and how they say the tefillah. You'll see that they have a different type of pronunciation than the one of the Ashkenazi and the one of the Sephardi, which is the original one. Okay, any other questions?
Yes.
Yes.
Rosh Hashiva speaks about Kiddush Hashem. From the Akedah, the near slaughter of Isaac, into more current times. The Babylonians, Persians, Greeks, Romans, Crusades, Inquisitions, culminating in the Holocaust. Millions and millions of Jews giving up their lives, Kiddush Hashem, down through the ages. The rivers of blood flow. Is society better for it? Has the world gotten better, or are we just continually bringing sacrifices in vain?
So this matter is discussed frequently in the works of the prophets. That we should know that the concept of Kiddush Hashem is to affirm that the spirit of man is greater than his body. Even when there's no body, the spirit of man, if it's kept pure, or becomes pure, has eternity. It's a basic principle of the whole Tanakh if you go into it deeply. In other words, that the true life is the spiritual life. Now, how can we understand it today? I think the simplest way is there's somebody, a non-Jewish. I'll give an example. It's a good book to show it. There's a book called Proof from Heaven. Who wrote the book Proof to Heaven? Abe Alexander, who was one of the most advanced professors of neurophysiology and psychology. And he was a great expert upon brain problems. And he did not believe in any of the near-death experiences, of which by today there are millions. He said it's all illusions. It's all a psychological illusion. Yeah, to have such experiences that people speak about, and which has become popularized by Moody, Life After Life. So he himself, he got a severe attack on his own brain, and was considered clinically dead for a time. He came out of it. And he wrote a book and made a website called Proof from Heaven. You find it on the website, you find it normally. He resisted it. He did not want to accept that what he experienced is true, but he couldn't. Because he said there was more truth there than elsewhere. I'll give an interesting example which happened to me personally. Not personally the experience, but I went to some lectures in London, University College, of the person who was considered one of the greatest professors of philosophy in the world. And he wrote a book called Language and Logic. He was a follower of Wittgenstein. Wittgenstein was the originator of logical positivism in modern philosophy. And what's the base of logical positivism? That the only truth that exists in this world is that which you know through logical methods of thinking, to include mathematics also, scientific method, and sense perception. The logic and one balances out the other, but these are the only two sources of truth, and everything else is illusion. Therefore, freedom is an illusion, religion is an illusion. And in fact, he was known in London that a person goes in religion, comes up irreligious, whatever religion belongs to. So I went to his lectures. He was called Professor Eyre, and he was a disciple of Wittgenstein. But first let me tell you, the classical work of logical positivism, which was written by Wittgenstein, who was a philosopher in Vienna and then after came to Cambridge, he wrote this book, which is the classic, and he made 6 chapters. When he came to the end of the 6th chapter, he says, when you've climbed the ladder of logical positivism, which means the only truth is that which knows through logic and the sense perception, you have to discard the ladder. And the last chapter is 1 sentence. In German, I'm doing it in German, I'll say it in English, I'll translate it. Of that of which you cannot speak, you have to remain silent. That's the final chapter. So many of his disciples say that Wittgenstein, he was also teacher of Bertrand Russell, maybe you heard of him, or Professor Eyre, he was their teacher in Cambridge. So there were some of them who said, yes, he was a logical positivist. You know, establish what we mean with scientific truth. But when you go climb up that ladder, you see there's something beyond scientific truth. But you can't use language for it. All language has to express itself in terms of sense perception and logic, because that's the use of language. But there's an aspect of the human being beyond language. So he was also a mystic. But Professor Eyre didn't go in that direction. Professor Eyre said, no, he accepted Wittgenstein in all his analysis, a debunker of all the moral philosophers, because they believed in some form of freedom, a debunker of all religious philosophy and all religion. That's how he was known. So, I'll tell you a story that happened to me, because I used to challenge him. My main challenge to him was, you claim, I said that to something in talk, you claim that the only truth that exists is sense perception and logic, because that's a proof. I said, how do you know it's a proof? Isn't that an axiom of faith? You've got blind faith in sense perception and blind faith in the power of logic of the human being. And he didn't like it. And also when I came to his classes, there were their Indian students with Indian gear, Indian dress. And I went to that shiur with a kippah on my head, because I thought it was necessary, because there were Jews there as well. So I defended, I attacked him in the shiur. So he asked me, please come to my class. I mean, it was an open course in modern philosophy. So I came to him. He said, please come to me. He says to me, look, I don't mind questions, but really I don't want you to carry on coming to my classes, because too much you challenge me more than is the right etiquette. And another matter, why do you wear such a kippah? So I said to him, what's that? I said, listen, according to your theory, there's no such thing as freedom. So it's predetermined that I should challenge you. According to you, you say there isn't such a thing as freedom. Everything's predetermined from causality. We're like the robot, like the animals, have their instinct, they have to do according to laws of cause and effect. The same applies to all human behavior. I said, it's predetermined I should come with this. And it's predetermined that I should go and challenge you. So he got more angry. Yeah. I said, okay, I won't come to your class anymore. That's when I stopped going to his class. So I'll tell you, I still remember what happened when my son got married in Johannesburg, South Africa. So Omer and others there, there's a branch of Omer there, they asked me, could I give a talk on free will and determinism? That was my subject. And I quoted this episode to explain how we can face the challenge of those who deny free will. Because the basis of the Torah is free will. People are free to choose. And that's got a lot to do with religion also. Got to do with the soul. He denied the existence. There isn't such a thing as the soul, he said. The soul is an illusion. So my chairman there was then the chief rabbi of South Africa, who worked together with him already in England, called Cyril Harris. So he said he saw in the week before in the most elite, for the elite newspaper in London, the time was the Observer. In the Observer, this Professor Eyre said an article from him. What was the article? He had a near-death experience, and he couldn't deny from the near-death experience the soul exists. It convinced him that he came out of it. He said, but I had a very strong experience of light that doesn't exist in this world, and also the end of it. So therefore, I give it up. I recant my philosophy. I made a mistake. So you see here the near-death experience. Now this is Kiddush Hashem. This is the Kiddush Hashem to the Jewish people. The Jewish people, we have to learn the lesson. It's mentioned by the prophets non-stop. It says all the time, if you keep the Torah, you'll get the spiritual personality goes on existing, you'll get the highest levels. If you don't, your soul will be cut off from the people, which means that your olam haba will either be non-existent or become the opposite. That's what will happen. And the Jews went willingly in situations where Hashem said, you've got to give up your life if you are being commanded to worship idols or to murder other people, to commit the most serious sexual crimes, in such circumstances, or when there's religious persecution, and because you've got to demonstrate that spiritual life is greater than material life. And that's the basis. We know that we say the greatest Kedoshim will go on living. It gives me an incentive to say Kaddish regularly, as far as I can, and I don't just say Kaddish for the people who don't have someone to say Kaddish for them, and there are such people. Even I'd say even today I cry about it, but Talmud Yeshiva. Yeah, good. So is it? He lost his life in tragic circumstances. Because he was really, his profession was, he'd been in the army, his profession was a security officer, and he was killed by soldiers. And they didn't make enough investigation. And I say this now, why? Because there's enormous investigation in a person, one of our soldiers, who killed a terrorist, when perhaps he needn't have killed him. Only he claims that it would appear he may have had weapons on his body, and dynamite on his body. So he felt it wasn't safe. So he killed him, although he was already wounded. But you know what they can do when they're wounded? They can still explode. And that's his claim. And this has caused such business. I think it's also partly responsible for the resignation of the Chief of Staff, or the Chief of Staff, or the Minister of Defense. So, and for this person, there's no one to say Kaddish, no investigation made. But it's because of Yeshiva Bach. You don't hear no Yeshiva, some of you may remember it.
I heard about it.
Pardon?
I heard about it.
Simcha ben Rabbi Shabbos, that's what one people say Kaddish for. That's why I don't want people to go out to, without being able to say the Kaddish, and that's why, and it gives me extra motivation to make sure we have a minyan every day. So let me continue. So therefore, I say, I'm not saying this is the only answer, it's much deeper. Because Kiddush Hashem One of the aspects is the Kiddush Hashem that comes about through giving up your life, rather the giving up Hashem. But the other aspect is the way to fulfill Kiddush Hashem is by saying Kaddish and fulfilling Kaddish, which means they gave over their lives. We are the survivors. We have to replace them by Kiddush Hashem in life. When it says in the Chumash, you should sanctify the name of Hashem, you have to sanctify him in life. Sanctify in life by linking up with Hashem. The Kaddish prayer, which is accepted by everybody as the true prayer for mourning, does not mention mourning, does not mention the soul of the dead. It mentions the task of the people of Israel to sanctify the name of Hashem. And the Rambam is so beautiful in his crystallization of the Torah in all its aspects. He speaks about different mitzvot. He says there's mitzvah for every Jew. When he introduces the chapter on sanctify the name of Hashem, which is in the first book of the Rambam, so he introduces this, Kol Beit Yisrael Mitzuvim Al Kiddush Shemo. When he first describes what we mean by the name of Hashem and the existence of Hashem, who is the absolute truth, the absolute source of morality, the absolute source of reality. So he says, the whole house of Israel is commanded with the mitzvah of sanctifying the name of Hashem, the essence of the people. That's what we have to do. If the survived Jewish people, half of whom are now in Baruch Hashem, in the Holy Land, if the image of this people would be Kiddush Hashem in life, that every Jew would know being a Jew means to sanctify the name of Hashem, and on the whole there are many aspects in which it's being fulfilled, but most of the Jews, or many of them, don't know what it means. And since also we say those who've defended Jews from our enemies in the land of Israel, they also died on Kiddush Hashem. Even if they didn't know what lies behind it, but in practice they fulfilled it. So do you think they all died in vain? We say that their death should be an extra motivation to us to kill Kiddush Hashem in life. We have to mention, and I'm very pleased indeed, you see it concerted out with our Prime Minister, that he, like begging before him, but many others didn't do it. You'll see in nearly every appeal that he makes, especially when there are non-Jews also listening, he says, we pray to God. His brilliant speech that he gave in the Congress, he emphasized it. Yeah, that we are people who are here to sanctify His name. And he says, we pray to God, He should help us. Even though it's not in that anthem, and it's not yet in the new version of Declaration of Independence, which should be. Because true independence, you depend upon God. And we should certainly spread the name of a God far and wide. Not just in words, but also in actions. And in actions, it's being done. People forget that regularly the army, they have a special medical team to make sure that any Palestinians who are injured in the area of Israel, that they work with them. They have a field medical staff who go out, all the injured amongst the Palestinians, and they try to rescue their lives. Because if they're afraid, obviously, if some of the terrorists they see, they've got things on their body, they're obligated, according to the laws of the Torah. We don't say, he who comes to kill you, show the other cheek. Yeah. If he starts wounding you on your one cheek, show him the other cheek. This hint at also the book of Eicha. That is a falsification of pacifism. There's no text in the world which emphasize the importance of peace, both in the Bible as well as in the words of the sages, the oral tradition. But there is a principle, uviata harami kebecha. You've got to remove evil from your midst. And pacifism does not mean never resist attacks. On the contrary, he who comes to kill you, if you can disarm him, you're supposed to disarm him. Take away his weapons. But you can't if it's tied on his body. If you can stop him by wounding him, do that. But if you see it's more dangerous, you have to kill him first before he's got his knife on your neck. You're obligated to do it for the sake of peace. Hashem ish milchama. Hashem shemu. Hashem is the midah chesed, the quality of loving kindness. And sometimes you've got to be tzapal milchomes, zurei tzedakos. You've got to be a master of war in order to sow the seeds of righteousness. That's what we need today. We've got to resist Daesh. We've got to resist. Even the nation of the world recognize Daesh. But really, the truth is, Hamas are in alliance with Daesh. That's what they want to recognize. Hamas come out also with statements. We've got to make sure all the Jews in Israel are sunk in the sea. And Iran is even worse. Come out, warning. We've got weapons. We've developed weapons now with a complete agreement of the Western world. Yeah. So at least from Obama and others. It's going through. They're starting more and more economic sanctions that existed before have been removed, and we're able to we have developed nuclear bombs, and we can wipe Israel, by which they mean the Jews in Israel, from the map in 8 minutes. And it's not an empty threat. They put it even on their missiles. So that's the situation. What is our defense has to be? Kiddush Hashem. We go and do in kindness, and we will save lives anywhere in the world. The fact that Israel is always ready to help medically, other ways, to save lives all over the world to anybody, and in the hospitals also, especially the Arabs from the West Bank, they know quite well. In the hospitals in Israel, you get the best treatment, and they make use of it. And the doctors, the Muslim doctors, get the best position, get very good positions. And the BDS, which it turned, I saw now a headline that a third of America, they made a survey, they keep making census surveys, a third of the American population supports BDS. And who instigated BDS? It says in the prophets, some of the most destructive forces come from your own midst. It's the Jews are very strong in BDS all over the world. So of course the non-Jews, they say, well, if the Jews think like that, we're also going to join in. And it turns out in the votes also about BDS, the UN, some vote about it. So it turns out that even basic European countries, Great Britain and Germany were amongst them, maybe even France, and they say they support the boycott on the Western Bank. Who suffers from this boycott? The Palestinians who are here suffer more than anybody else. Palestinians don't want it, most of them rank and file, because they can get jobs. And now they're losing jobs in the West Bank. That's the situation. So therefore, we have to make Kiddush Hashem. Because we're going to link up, we've got to make it clear to others and link up all groups that this is the task of the people of Israel, and mankind has to recognize it. It's true that it's helping a bit. There's certain signs that the recognition of Israel, if you know, they already become more right-wing, to be stronger against, like the turn towards the right is becoming quite strong, and especially the right in Israel is recognized to some extent as being the method to remove terrorism. Because even in Europe, there are people who are afraid of what's happening. European values are being submerged. So Western civilization was regarded as having certain moral principles, and now it's one of the main reasons why is it the nations in Europe, they've absorbed so many extreme Muslims. The Muslims, you can't change many of them. It's very difficult. Instead of them learning Western values, the majority of the nation become Muslims with Muslim destructive values. But one of the reasons is because the Western world has not absorbed sufficiently the Noahide code. Realize behind it. Therefore, their birthright is going down. That's why I might say, why are sexual aspects included in the most severe crimes? Because the preservation of the family is the way to ensure there should be continuity in the civilization of the Jewish people. But when it becomes fashionable to do without children, which is a perversion generally, based upon perversions, when it becomes fashionable, if you do have a child, just have one, or maximum two. So of course the Muslims who believe in fertility, that's one of their ways they are beginning to conquer the Western world, because they turn out the majority. European countries are afraid our whole economy is going to collapse because of the decreasing birth rate of people educated also for generations in Western values. So of course so Islam is becoming stronger, because in that Islam they believe in having children. They also oppose to, on the whole, especially the religious ones, even though they believe also in Jihad, at the same time they also believe, they find Jihad also more easy, or they say, Muslims, you can have 30 children, just take a few wives. So therefore, they also know if they'll transfer from Syria and other places where there's mass killings through non-conventional weapons, they'll transfer to European countries, they'll take over the European countries. Because their birthright is 10 times as much as the Western birthright. They'll become the majority, and the whole structure of European civilization will collapse. It'll all become Muslim values. So they'll increase, but not always accompanied by a change from the death cult into the life cult, which is the Jews are the life cult, and the extremists are the death cult. So today, mankind stands before the choice. See, I've said before you today, et ha'chaim v'et ha'tov v'et ha'mavet v'et ha'ra. Life and that which is good, good means virtue, pure virtue, and death and that which is evil means vice. It's a battle between vice and virtue. So we have to uphold virtue. We have to uphold life. Any other questions?
Just as a follow-up,
Fine.
Masada,
Yes.
one Jew killing another,
Yeah.
is that Kiddush Hashem?
No. Not allowed. Not allowed. Yeah. She said Matzada was not there. It was, what was the right approach? There were three parties amongst the Jewish people in the time of the Herodian persecution of Matzada, Adrianic persecution. but also even earlier, the destruction of Jerusalem. 3 parties in Jerusalem, Jewish parties. There were the Sadducees, who on the whole said, let's give in to the Romans. We don't mind Roman civilization so much, Roman values. You know, let's keep exactly what they want, and let's be fulfilling our role as Roman citizens, even if we have to give up Jerusalem to be under Roman rulership, but a peaceful way. Like the extreme liberal people who speak in the name of peace today. That were the Sadducees amongst the Jewish people. Then there were extreme zealots. We don't know, can't we give in? And we've got strong walls here, and we must continue the battles against the Romans, and we'll be stronger than them. And these were very extreme right-wingers, we would call them today, who said they would not allow anyone to go and try and make any peace with the Romans. Therefore they posted people at entrances and controlled it. They were in control. And there were battles going on with regard to supplies, because there were a lot of supplies left in Jerusalem under the siege, but the battles between these 3 groups became strong, and if you read the account of it, Josephus gives a direct observer's account, because he was the one who recorded these things for Titus. He managed to save his life by becoming the recorder. He was a big scholar, and he could translate easily everything from Hebrew into Latin. So he describes the 3 groups in detail. The Gemara also speaks about it. And well, the sages were the Prussian. Who was the Prussian? Yochanan and Zakkai, head of the Sanhedrin. And he said, he saw that what happened with the battles inside Jerusalem. These are Nechan battles between the Jewish people. One party burnt up the supplies of the other party to make it impossible to survive for long. So of course they create much more tension, and the extremists, they try to stop anyone from going up to the Romans to, the Romans also insisted, or will carry on, even before the siege, they said, right, if we want you to bring an offering for us. It was one of the principles, how to demonstrate that the Jews are willing to follow the Romans. They insisted, in your temple you must bring an offering from us. Some of you know that I'm not repeating the detailed account of all this, what happened from the Gemara in Gittin, which you can look up, where it is described. But the Perushim, they said, we must make a compromise. We don't want them to go and kill off the Jewish people in Jerusalem and in this land. They've killed too many. So therefore we must make a compromise. So Rabbi Yochanan was the leader. And the leader of the Zealots was a relative of his. They tried to influence him, he didn't want to listen. It's an extremist. Like today, of course, I've got some extremists. There's an extreme one. See, extremists go on the Harabait, it's a big provocation today. No, it's a serious situation. Everyone's afraid that the ones who've got an organization really to build the Beit HaMikdash and remove the mosque, that's at least what the Muslims suspect, is become a member of the Knesset. So just like Lieberman has changed his, gone from his complete right a bit to a compromise, like Ariel Sharon went also, made a complete change. He was a strong right-wing leader, became the most left-wing aspect you can imagine, by giving a Gush Katif, which was an illusion, and everyone recognized what an illusion it was. Let's hope that today the people will be too much on the right. That means they're not really following the way of the Torah. Yehuda Glick certainly does not follow in his practice what is demanded by nearly all the Rabbanim of Israel, including Rav Kook in his time, all the chief rabbis until today, and others. So it's, and we know that to provoke the Pere Adam, the wildness of the extreme Muslims, it's very dangerous. The wildness can blow up any moment, but let's hope it will be retained. We'll find some way. So now Rabbi Yochanan Zakkai, he asked for three things. One of the most important ones: please preserve the scholars and the great center of Torah of Yavne, where the Sanhedrin was. He agreed. He made an agreement with Vespasian, but how could he get to make the agreement? They had all his disciples say he's died. He's died. Put him in a coffin, and they didn't want to make a huge levaya, And then they managed somehow to get his coffin. He had to go to coffin to go outside the walls of Jerusalem because of the extreme right wingers. So, but Yochanan Zakkai did not only make a Kiddush Hashem, because he made a connection with Vespasian, who was then in charge of the siege, and he told him, "You're going to be the emperor." That is described, and he made some friends with Vespasian. And then Titus, who followed, had to follow the agreement made with Vespasian. So in this way, the Jewish people's spirit survived, because the big Torah Academy survived. That's what's responsible for the survival. That's the biggest Kiddush Hashem. And today also, we have to make the biggest Kiddush Hashem by demonstrating the purpose of the people of Israel is not territory, it's spirituality. Okay, the territory is connected with it, but how to go about it? There are parameters given by the greatest sages, already hinted at in the Tanakh, that our main defense is Hashem Yeshu, that it belongs to Hashem. And we must keep proclaiming that, so gradually we will get also more support from even the religious world amongst the Muslims. And they will become a stronger force. That's what we have to do today. Okay. So I can't continue now, there's many questions, but we can carry on some questions tomorrow, and I'll tell you what I will deal with tomorrow a bit more. It's because I'm still going to connect it with the counting of the Omer, but in yesterday's shir, so I explained that the sources of the Torah go back to the Chumash, the word of Hashem, which includes a very deep spiritual aspect also in many of the episodes, including the Akedah Yitzchak, you spoke about, and I'll show you how this is reflected all the way along, even those who did not ever see the Zohar. They didn't know of it. Those are great scholars, because as I said, it was always kept secret, and the secret traditions of the Zohar were through many generations kept to a few who preserved its secrecy and tried as far as possible not to let it become popular. And when it became popular, it became dangerous. Like perhaps the classical example, as I end with this, is Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, who was a brilliant scholar, a genius unheard of, in many languages, in many sciences, in nearly all the philosophies, because he lived in the time of the Renaissance in Italy, which was a rebirth. Renaissance means rebirth of open scholarship, and he knew an enormous amount, and he was a very deep mystic. He even wrote many mystical treatises, basing also upon Kabbalah. He knew the Zohar. And he produced the most popular ethical work available, called The Path of the Just, of which there are in fact two editions. The edition which he was allowed to continue with was one which doesn't mention a word of Kabbalah. It's just based upon the Bible and upon what the sages say about the steps towards saintliness from ignorance. Mention the Gemara, the price of Pinchas Ben Yair. That's what it's based on. Like today, also have a 12-stage program for what's alcoholic anonymous and so on. So every person, there's a whole stage, one to the next. And he had to, because like this, because shortly before his time, there was the movement of the false Messiah Shabtai Tzvi, who ended up to become a Muslim. But he started off by being a Kabbalist on the highest level. He knew the Kabbalah, and the Zohar was used to go and make out that he's the Mashiach. So then, some scholars believed in him, because there were so many troubles as well as before. They believed in him. And there's proof from the Kabbalah, so-called. And there's proof from all types of codes and gematrias that he's the Mashiach. Like today, the Christians, and especially the new codes that have been discovered, where you can do all sorts of combinations. So you should know the Christians use the Hebrew code system to prove that Yeshua was the Messiah, and the Muslims prove there that Muhammad was the Messiah. They use it. In fact, I even saw a certain Christian writing where they used the code system produced by Isha Torah to prove that Christianity is the Messiah. You can prove it they can prove it. And you can prove anything. If you really work with computers, to a person, because it has to be limited. Because you could transcribe many Hebrew words. If you transcribe them into other languages, there's generally, there used to be a joke in Jewish circles, you can write Noach with 7 mistakes. Even the name Noach, you can make 7 mistakes how to spell it. See? And then you make a matroas, I mean, to go and make a matroas, any person could have book a matroas and prove whatever he wants. If it's used on the computer, is extended sufficiently. So you've got now to so there were in many German communities they even did not allow. There's some communities they said we can't sing L'Chadodi because it was composed by a Kabbalist. You can't say Brich Shemei because it's said Brich Shemei, which is saying when the Torah is taken out, is taken directly from the Zohar. They exclude. And when Moshe Chaim Lutzato came with any book, they put him, the Rabbonim excommunicated, and then burnt many of his books. Yeah.
Maharal?
Yes. Many were burnt, and the others were buried. You have to find them afterwards. And he was only permitted to not be, he was put into excommunication in different places, and he had to prove that he was innocent. Because the Kabbalah you can distort. I told you today also, the Kabbalah centers are distortion of Kabbalah. It happens going on today. So, you've got to know, the Kabbalah was known to people and they banished it. And in early generations, by some it wasn't known, not under the name of Kabbalah. But anyone who knows Torah, any part of the Torah, he knows there's a mystical aspect in the Chumash, certainly in the prophets, certainly the prophet of Daniel. It's all mystical, of what we call mystical. And also, in the words of the Mishnah, Chagiga mentions explicitly Maaseh Merkava, Sefer Yetzirah, Maaseh Bereshit. These are mystical aspects. In fact, the first Rashi, which says, the Torah could have begun with HaChodesh Zelachem. So they ask the question, what do you mean? The Torah isn't important. It should tell it all about creation and the Gan Eden. They say, but the Gan Eden, that's mystical. What it says in the Chumash about Adam and Eve and the snake and the tree, it's all a mystical description. So therefore, it doesn't have to belong to the Torah, which is there to show us how to live. So it's not necessary. It could have been put aside for the deeper traditions which are esoteric. But so That's what the Ramban says. So, the Ramban was himself a mystic. Because he understood many passages of the Chumash deal with mysticism, even transmigration of the soul. By which he explains Yibum, levirate marriage. But that's for another occasion.
Shkrach.
And to do the